What did American taxpayers get for their multi-billion-dollar black budget investment? Doreen Kendall was a nurse. She was at the Duncan, Vancouver, British Island Hospital. This is January 1st, 1970. She was caring to one of her patients. It was at night. She was on the 3rd floor of the children's ward at the hospital, and she noticed that one of her patients was getting a little bit restless here. So she went over to the window. She opened up the drapes, tried to get some air in there, and she had the shock of her life. This craft was parked right outside the window, like 10 feet outside the window here. There were 2 medium-sized, very well-built men. They were wearing a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. They'd had helmets on. This thing was 50 feet in diameter. It had a bubble transparent canopy. They were standing next to stools, so that doesn't sound extraterrestrial. They also were standing very near this control panel that had buttons and switches and dials and levers. Now, the one on the far side turned and looked at Doreen. They actually had visual contact. At that point, this being turned to the side, he tapped the shoulder of the other gentleman within this bubble transparent canopy. He pulled this lever once, back again, and then one more time, and then this thing took off at a slow rate of speed. This is back in 1970. Here is the newspaper clipping. Times colonists, January 5th, 1970. Human-like pair, craft hovers 50 feet from the hospital. Very good close range. Example of hybrid ET craft retrofitted with an atomic-powered propulsion system. This is what we want to take a look at here. Fort Hood, and this is late 1960s, so we're talking about 1968 time frame here. Private pilot sort UFO crash retrieval, which we talked about a little bit earlier. This is page 91. So we've got this private pilot. He's in the vicinity of Fort Hood, Texas. Within Fort Hood, Texas, is something called Robert Gray Army Airfield. That's a critical part of this whole story. So he's having some type of engine problem. Something's going wrong with the Cessna 172. He makes an emergency landing at Gray Army Airfield, and it's on a dirt runway, unimproved surface. Within 15 seconds, he is met by some interesting personnel here, and we want to consider just a couple of quotes about this Gray Army Airfield, Fort Hood, Texas area. This is from researcher Tarmy Blond, and this is page 100 of the Stringfield book here. The colonel stated that the underground installations, as well as isolated areas of military reservations, have squadrons of unmarked helicopters which have sophisticated instrumentation on board that are dispatched to areas of UFO activity to monitor these craft or airlift them out of the area if one has malfunctioned. He went on here, quote, the technology that is being applied in this underground complex would remind someone of a science fiction thriller. It is unbelievable what they know and can do from this area. So back to our story here. We've got multiple reports of UFOs coming from this area, and they're being escorted by military helicopters like CH-47 Chinook double rotor helicopters. That's what are escorting these UFOs. So here we've got our Cessna 172 pilot. He made this emergency landing, and then he's met by these MPs with these pistols pointing directly at him. While all this is going on concurrently, this absolutely huge 400-foot by 400-foot bypass door opens up. No one would ever know it was there because on the upper texture of it, it had rocks, it had leaves, it had shrubbery, it had low shrubs, a couple of trees. You would never know it there. It's because it blends in with the background. Now, as this bypass door opens up, he could see that there was a Cray computer system there. We also know that we could have CH-47 helicopters there, and then we'll take a look at the Cash Landrum incident much later. So this is what this gentleman saw at this particular location. Here is the rendering of what this underground runway looks like. So what they were doing is this could be used as a staging area for C-130 cargo aircraft landing at this absolutely huge underground facility. You can see here we've got the Cash Landrum craft, we've got the Eddie Laxon craft, we've got other vehicles, and we've got the CH-47s at this underground facility. So that takes us to December 29th, 1980, Huffman, Texas. We've got Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and Colby Landrum. It's about 9 p.m. at night. They're driving down the road. All of a sudden, something that looks like a double ice cream cone parks itself right in front of their vehicle. Betty Cash stops the car. It's at night. This is December. It's cold out. And there's this roaring noise and this blue flame, didn't look like a campfire flame, coming from the bottom of this craft. It's bobbing up and down. It has a proximity sensor, so there's this beeping noise going on while this is all going on. She gets out of the vehicle, goes toward the hood of the craft while she's watching this, very close proximity. As she goes back to open up the car door, she burns her hand on the handle. And then when she goes back inside, it was so hot they had to turn the air conditioning on. This is in the height of winter here. Within about 3 minutes, as this craft is departing, there are no less than 23 double rotor CH-47 helicopters that are chasing after this thing with spotlights. This is December 29th, 1980, Huffman, Texas. Within an hour of all three witnesses getting home, they all suffered the acute effects of radiation sickness. So is this an example of a atomic powered craft that had a hull breach on the side of it that was spewing out fissionable material? Here we have the newspaper clippings. Clarion Ledger, December 25th, 1983. What did three Texans encounter? We've got Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, we've got John Schuessler, and also Colby Landrum. Here's the map, trace effects, Florida Today, December 4th, 1983. Betty Cash lost all her hair. Her nails fell out. She had sickness all the way till the time that she passed away. This case made it to court, but it was never heard by the judge. And we'll move on here to the next case. This is a B-52 sighting from the crew of a B-52 over Guam back in 1966. This came from my good friend Mark McCandlish. Now keep in mind, this is at night, and this B-52, you see this little red dot on the right side of this dome here? That's the B-52. This craft was about a half a mile in diameter. They did 3 orbits around the dome of this craft that had about 27 levels. These pilot and co-pilot, they could actually count the levels of this craft. As they're making 3 orbits around, and they could do this because the B-52 was shielded for EMP, so there was no effect on the B-52 or the crewmen. You can see these bypass doors around the outer circumference of the craft. We'll go to the AutoCAD drawing here. These bypass doors started rotating quicker and faster until they turned into a complete blur. Once that happened, the B-52 kind of peeled off, and then something bizarre took place. I'll go to the drawing that shows you how Mark indicated how they were making a left-hand orbit around this craft that's about a half mile in diameter. And again, this is at night. When this craft departed, it was completely blackout, but as it departed, it opened up some type of a wormhole, and the B-52 crew members could see blue sky and clouds, and then it trickled back to darkness again. It had opened up some type of wormhole and then departed into this wormhole. When the B-52 landed, all crew members were debriefed.